No one expected the room to go silent that quickly. 5 elegant women sat perfectly poised, dressed in luxury, each confident she would be chosen. This was supposed to be simple, a decision made with wealth, status, and appearances in mind. But the little girl standing beside her father looked past all of that. Her eyes moved slowly across the room, and stopped on someone no one else had considered. In that moment, everything changed. The millionaire had built an empire from nothing. Success came easily to him now, but raising his daughter alone never had. After years of loss and distance, he believed it was time to give her a new mother, someone refined, respected, and accepted in his world. That's why he arranged the meeting. 5 accomplished women, each with polished smiles and perfect answers. The plan was simple: let his daughter choose. But standing quietly near the doorway was another woman. She wasn't dressed in luxury. She wasn't part of the plan. She had been in the house for years, working silently, caring deeply, asking for nothing. And yet, when the question was finally asked, it wasn't the rich candidates who held the child's attention. It was her. The father smiled politely as the women introduced themselves one by one. They spoke of education, travel, elegance, and opportunity. Each promised a bright future filled with privilege. The daughter listened carefully, nodding respectfully, but her small hands tightened together as something inside her resisted the answers she was supposed to like. She remembered the nights she cried quietly, and who brought her warm tea. She remembered scraped knees, school worries, lonely mornings. None of the women sitting proudly in front of her had been there for those moments. Someone else had. Someone who never raised her voice, never demanded attention, never expected praise. When it was time to choose, the room leaned forward. Father expected hesitation, maybe confusion. What he didn't expect was certainty. His daughter lifted her hand and pointed, not to the sofas, not to the polished smiles, but toward the woman standing near the wall, startled by her own name being spoken aloud. The room froze. The candidates exchanged looks of disbelief. Father's smile faded, replaced by confusion. This wasn't part of the plan. Not even close. The housekeeper stood still, unsure she had heard correctly. Her hands trembled slightly as she tried to speak, but no words came. She had never imagined being seen this way. She had never wanted more than to do her job well and care quietly for the child she'd grown to love. Father knelt beside his daughter, lowering his voice. He asked gently if she was sure. Girl nodded without hesitation. She explained simply, honestly. This woman listened. This woman cared. The woman felt like home. The room felt uncomfortable now. Some faces showed disbelief, others quiet judgment. Father stood slowly, torn between expectation and truth. First time in years, he realized he had been looking in the wrong direction. Love could attract many things, but love had already been present in his home, unnoticed. And as he turned toward the woman no one had chosen, except the one person who mattered most, he understood that this decision would challenge everything he thought he knew about family. The reaction was immediate and impossible to ignore. One woman cleared her throat, another shifted uncomfortably in her seat, and a third forced a polite smile that didn't hide her disappointment. The atmosphere that once felt elegant now felt strained. The father straightened his jacket, aware of every eye in the room. He hadn't expected his daughter's choice to challenge him like this, especially in front of people who assumed they already belonged in his world. He asked the housekeeper to sit down, his voice calm but uncertain. Hesitated, glancing at the floor before slowly taking a seat at the edge of the room. She didn't try to impress anyone. She didn't defend herself. She waited, the same way she always had, patiently, respectfully. Her moved closer to her, slipping her small hand into hers without hesitation. That simple gesture spoke louder than any explanation. The father watched closely. At that moment, he realized his daughter wasn't choosing comfort or status. She was choosing safety. Someone who showed up every day, quietly, consistently. Someone who knew her favorite stories and noticed when she was afraid. The realization unsettled him, because it meant acknowledging that love had already existed in his home, and he had overlooked it. Candidates tried to recover the moment. One spoke about opportunities and education. Another reminded him of shared social circles and public expectations. Their words were polished, but they felt distant now, almost rehearsed. The daughter listened politely, but her grip on the housekeeper's hand never loosened. The father felt torn between two worlds. One built on appearances, the other on truth. He excused the women for a short break, needing time to think. As they left the room, whispers followed. Some were confused. Some were dismissive. None truly understood what had just happened. Left alone, the father finally spoke to the housekeeper, not as an employer, but as a man trying to understand his own home. He asked how she saw his daughter. Her answer was simple. She said she saw a child who needed patience, reassurance, and consistency. She never claimed to replace anyone. She only said she cared. That honesty struck him harder than any promise he'd heard that day. The decision wasn't made quick. Spent the evening reflecting on moments he'd ignored, missed breakfasts, rushed goodnights, assumptions he'd never questioned. Realized that while he had provided everything money could buy, he hadn't always been present in the ways that mattered most. The next morning, he gathered everyone again. His daughter stood confidently at his side. The housekeeper remained calm, prepared for any outcome. When he spoke, his voice was steady, but emotional. He said the choice wasn't about replacing someone. It was about recognizing who had already been. Some were surprised. Others quietly nodded. Father turned to the housekeeper and thanked her, not just for her work, but for her heart. He acknowledged the dignity and care she had brought into his home, long before anyone asked her to. At that moment, the decision became clear. Not because of pressure, not because of appearances, because a child had seen what adults had missed. And sometimes, the clearest truth comes from the smallest voice in the room. The announcement didn't end the conversation, it began a transformation. News traveled fast through the household, then beyond it. Staff members who had always kept their distance now looked at the housekeeper with new respect. She remained the same, arriving early, leaving quietly, focused on routine. But the father noticed a subtle shift in his daughter. She laughed more freely. She slept without calling out in the night. For the first time since her mother was gone, the house felt lighter. The father started spending evenings at home instead of attending events. Watched how the housekeeper listened without interrupting, how she corrected gently, how she turned ordinary moments into small rituals of comfort. None of it was dramatic. All of it was real. He realized love didn't need announcements or titles. It showed up in details. When he finally spoke to his daughter about the change, she smiled and said she already felt like she had a family again. Simple sentence stayed with him long after she fell asleep. Everyone approved. At a formal gathering, questions were asked behind polite smiles. Assumptions floated through quiet conversations. The father felt the pressure, but this time, he didn't bend. He answered calmly, choosing honesty over explanation. Said his priority was his child's well-being, not public approval. The housekeeper was aware of the attention and felt its weight. One evening, she offered to step back if it caused trouble. The father shook his head. He told her that dignity didn't require permission, and care didn't need justification. Thanked her again, not with money or praise, but with trust. Night, the daughter hugged them both, her arms small but certain. In that moment, the future didn't feel complicated. It felt right. Time passed, and the home settled into a new rhythm. Father learned to slow down. Daughter learned to speak up. And the housekeeper, now a steady presence, helped shape a space rooted in respect and warmth. Celebrations became quieter but more meaningful. Were shared, not rushed. Stories were told, not skipped. One afternoon, the father realized something surprising. The house had never been empty, it had just been unheard. Love he'd been searching for in the wrong places had been there all along, patient and unassuming. He understood then that true wealth wasn't measured by what you could choose, but by what you could recognize when it stood in front of you. Years later, when the daughter was older, she would tell the story simply. She'd say she chose the person who showed up. The one who made her feel safe, one who treated her heart with care. Father would listen and smile, grateful that he'd trusted her voice. Housekeeper would listen too, proud not of a title, but of a bond built on kindness. The lesson would linger. Sometimes, the bravest choice isn't the loudest one. The quiet decision to see people for who they truly are.